Hi, Jordan Billington here, and this is my career timeline. And I just want to hit some of the highlights because this was a very lengthy document. I want to start first by talking about my first couple jobs. The first one being at the age of 15 at Food Line, working as a cashier, and then the other at the age of 18. So it was a few years before I changed jobs, but then I went on to become a receptionist at the local campground and park in my hometown. And I think both of these jobs, the thing that I want to point out about them is that these were the first opportunities that I had to go to work, to clock in, and to recognize that the time I put into something and the work that I put into something then translated into a paycheck. So it's the first time I was compensated for the work that I did. And in both of these roles, I loved that feeling. I loved knowing that this work that I'm doing directly correlates into a paycheck. And I could think about what I wanted to do with those funds, and I could think about the long-term goals that I had for my financial decisions. I bought my first car as a result of these two jobs. I opened my first savings account, and I remember plotting out, if I work, this is when I'm scheduled to work, but if I pick up shifts, then I can make X amount more money. And this is the first time it really instilled in me this work ethic, but also accomplishment, because I felt very accomplished when I clocked out at the end of the day, even though my jobs weren't very challenging, because it meant that I had done something and I felt that that was significant. After that, I had a rather long dip into the service industry, working at my hometown restaurant Goobers, to Boardwalk Billy's, back to Goobers as a bartender, and then back to Boardwalk Billy's again, this time at a different location. And I think with all of these, this work was certainly lucrative. It was very flexible in terms of the hours, but it was incredibly challenging work when it came to the actual labor, the intensive labor experience. It wasn't a particularly intellectually stimulating role, and it didn't challenge me in that way, in that sense, which I value. But I think from these roles, I understood a few things about myself. I understood that I value stability. I like having a regular schedule. I like having regular income and not relying on tips to pay the bills that I had. I also value being intellectually stimulated and challenged. And the other thing about the service industry is that this was the first chance I had to really work with the public and to get some customer service experience. And I think through the different restaurants and different experiences, it gave me some thicker skin. I felt more confident in myself. I, as a person, am very introverted, but have somehow, for whatever reason, really fallen into extroverted roles throughout my career. And so I know that I enjoy the work that I do, but in all of these roles, service industry, and then later, I think the hardest part is that I know that when I go home, I'm a little bit more tired and exhausted because I am on so much and having to be on more than I'm feeling comfortable, because it's my preference certainly to be more reserved and introverted and sort of tucked away from people. But the service industry pulled me out of my shell a little bit, and I think that was the start of the direction that I ultimately headed in. Eventually, at the age of 23, I started working at UNC Charlotte, which was my alma mater. I took a job when I was in graduate school. It was a temporary position. It was an opportunity to get on campus, to work on campus. It was strictly administrative. I did a lot of filing, a lot of answering the phones, but I think I appreciated the stability and the education, the value of education that came with it. And I think this was the first point in this role that I got to really voice my thoughts. And when I voiced my ideas and they were heard and they were well received, it led to me then becoming a full-time employee. So then the office I worked in hired me full-time, which I've enjoyed. Still very administrative at that point. It wasn't until graduate school that I transitioned into an academic advising role. And this was the point when I felt just truly fulfilled in this role. I loved working as an advisor. I loved working one-on-one with students, and this reminded me of working as a bartender because I had worked one-on-one with clients and customers, and that was fantastic. And having the chance to talk to one person and to learn about their story was a really great experience. It also gave me a chance to explore public speaking, which I've never enjoyed, but do a lot of in my role, and so I had to get more used to that and more comfortable. I think it really instilled in me the value of helping other people, and it really gave me this student-centered philosophy, and I wanted to continue that work and have done that in my future roles. You can see I then became a transfer admissions counselor, working with students who are going through the transfer process. Then I became the passport program coordinator, and then at the age of 30, I was promoted to my current role, which is an assistant director of admission, and still promoting and supporting the passport program. I think all of these experiences have been incredibly positive for me. And I think my values and the things that I hold dear have come from these experiences. My current role, I'd say the hard part is that a value that I have is recognition and acknowledgement. And unfortunately, I've learned that because I don't receive significant recognition by any stretch. And I think that's a challenge for me. And so, really fleshing out the things that matter to me and knowing the things that I'm looking for and thinking about how that impacts my future career decisions. And then just a really quick note about how I want to end this in terms of the future. I've got two different pathways I'm pursuing that I need to think through a little bit more. One is as an advancement into my institution, going in the direction of an assistant dean or an associate director role, ultimately leaving UNC Charlotte because I've worked at my alma mater since 2010, and I think it would be good for me to have the chance to explore a different institution. So thinking through what this promotion would mean, and then also maybe going the nonprofit route. I've thought a lot about working in the nonprofit sector, doing more research focused work. I think that would be the ultimate. There is certainly potential for a larger impact, which I think would be interesting, but it would mean that I'd lose some of that student contact that I really value. And so I've been thinking a lot about these different career pathways. And I think for me, this assignment was really helpful. This really forced me to think through all of the different roles that I've had in work and to process the things that I got from those experiences, even when they were negative, the things that I learned about myself, and then think about the trajectory of my career. After doing this, I sat down with my husband and we started thinking about long-term where we could go, and recognizing that my plan is not to stay at UNC Charlotte forever, to look at other institutions or other maybe nonprofit organizations. And he and I have spent a lot of time in the last couple of days thinking about what this would mean for us and for our family, and what it would mean to relocate, and some of the different things that we'd want to accomplish, because he's also in a place where we're trying to think through career-wise what makes the most sense, trajectory, and towards retirement, because we both have about 15 years in to the North Carolina system at this point. And so, well, I have 10 and he has 15. So we're trying to process that a little bit more and trying to think through some of the ways that that the future could go. And I think using this with my students, asking them to map out the different roles that they've had over the years, not just work roles, which is what I focused on, but also extracurricular activities and some of the different things that they've taken on, projects they've taken on, leadership roles, that kind of thing, and having them really map out in a very deeply reflective way what they want to accomplish, what they have accomplished, what they think is important, and how these decisions and these values and the things that they hold dear matter when it comes to their future career path. And so I think this was a really challenging exercise for me in a good way. I enjoyed it. I think it's really forced me to think about my past, my present, and then of course the future. And I do so appreciate that. So this is something I want to find a way to implement into my career development course that I'm teaching, but also I want to do it one-on-one with my students. I've got a couple students who are undecided about the direction they want to go in, and I think it would be really helpful if we could have them map out some of their prior experiences and do some of that deep reflection. Thank you.